Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
It wasn't really clear.
The purpose of these orders is to break those chains of transmission.
COVID confusion, clarifying the new rules as cases soar in BC.
But it is going to require people to get with the program.
If cases don't come down, warnings of a possible return to a de facto lockdown. And
I think we can see light at the end of the tunnel.
Cautious optimism. Pfizer says its trial vaccine is 90% effective against COVID-19.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening. Confusion about new public health orders and a surge in new cases sum up the COVID-19 situation in BC tonight.
Going to get to those restrictions in just a minute. First, the latest numbers. In the last 2 days, the virus has killed 5 more people, bringing our province's total to 281. Active cases are at a record high, now just under 4,900. More than 9,000 people are under active public health monitoring. Hospitalizations are also up, now at 133, with 43 in ICU. That's a stark increase from last week, when just 90 people were in care and less than half in critical condition. There were 998 new cases, 998 from Saturday to today. The Fraser Health region accounting for 74% of the total. In light of the growing COVID-19 cases, the province introduced new restrictions over the weekend.
But those restrictions have only led to further confusion. As our Joel Ballard reports, many are now calling for clearer guidelines.
New restrictions were announced Saturday, but many are still unsure about exactly what they are.
Yeah, we were quite confused, and I saw it the next day or two, and people were confused.
It wasn't really clear. There weren't specific things that you have to do.
And all this confusion has raised questions about how the COVID-19 message is being delivered in BC. Since the beginning of the pandemic, Dr. Henry has drawn both national and international accolades for her efforts.
BC was really in what we might call the sort of top tier of places that had done a very effective job.
This UBC professor spent months studying the COVID-19 communication efforts of 9 different countries that managed relatively effective responses, including Canada. But she says recently BC has slipped. Effective public health communication, she found, relies on autonomy. Let people make informed decisions for themselves.
But the key to that functioning, which really functioned incredibly well for the first phase of BC's response to the pandemic, was that it was clear where the boundaries of that were.
She says the 50-person gathering limit was an example of that clear guideline.
And I think, at least for now, we need a bit more clarification on exactly where that boundary is lying between our autonomy and where those orders are.
Today, Dr. Henry was aware people were confused.
You think you had questions this weekend? I had many, many more, I am sure.
However, she said that's common when new orders go into place.
It's a shock when we put in these types of things, and it takes us some time to figure out the details, to make sure the information gets out to people in a way that they understand.
With no clear end in sight for the pandemic, Twerk says BC should also further explore the power of social media in all its forms.
The idea of using social media is not a gimmick. It is about a basic principle of communication, which is that you meet people where they're at. And many young people are on social media.
Overall, she says people want to follow the rules as long as they know exactly what they are. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, Dr. Bonnie Henry did clarify some of the confusion today. And to break down the new restrictions is our Tina Lovegreen now.
So, Tina, what's allowed and what's not allowed under these new rules?
Okay, well, let's start with the basics. These restrictions came into effect on Saturday at 10 p.m. and will last for about 2 weeks, ending on Monday, November 23rd at 12 p.m. Will they be extended? Well, the goal is to have these restrictions be temporary, but it's very well possible they will be extended in some cases. Now, let's clarify where these restrictions apply. They are regional, and so if you live in the Vancouver Coastal Health or Fraser Health regions, these restrictions do apply to you. But they do exclude the Central Coast Regional District and Bella Coola Valley. Now, let's drill down to the restrictions themselves. The first thing is limit travel. If you're heading in and out of the Lower Mainland or the Fraser Valley, it should be limited to essential travel only. And when it comes to social gatherings, that's where we're seeing the most strict restrictions and some of that confusion come into play. You're only to socialize with your immediate household, or as I like to call it, immediate bubble. So that's people you live with, your partner, or people who are part of your regular routine, for example, a co-parent. And if you do live alone, you can have a bubble of 1 or 2 people. Here's Dr. Bonnie Henry explaining what is safe and what isn't.
Yes, it's safe to be outside. Be outside with 1 or 2 of your friends. Go for a walk. Keep your distances, but no backyard barbecues right now. Those are the types of activities that we need to suspend because we know when we get together, it's very hard to maintain those safe distances.
And so the concern really seems to be the virus spreading at people's homes. So no birthday parties, house parties, or wedding receptions, though you still can get married at a church or hold a funeral just with your close household. You can also still go to restaurants, but keep to those COVID protocols and go with your close household. Another big restriction is for group fitness classes, especially those indoors. We're talking spin classes, yoga classes, or dance classes.
Gyms who have one-on-one where people can go and they have adequate space and they can work with a trainer or in a 1-to-2 ratio with trainers in specific gyms, those are fine and they can continue right now. What we're talking about is those more crowded, clustering indoor settings where we have vigorous exercise, and we have now learned that that is an environment where this virus can spread quickly.
Sports that are non-contact, I'm talking curling or swimming, are fine to continue as long as you don't congregate in groups outside or in the locker room before and after the event. And that's really the bottom line here, trying to avoid gatherings of groups.
Okay, so Tina, did health officials talk about what happens if people don't stick to these new regulations?
Yeah, I mean, after all, these rules are only good if people follow them. And it will be a week or 2 until we actually see if these new restrictions have helped to bring down the number of COVID-19 cases in our province. Premier John Horgan had a very stern warning urging people to tighten up their social interactions, or we could go back to what it was like in March.
Is going to require people to get with the program, and there's a whole bunch of people that are not abiding by the minimalist rules we had in place, and that's why we've seen the regional issues that Dr. Henry brought forward this week.
We also heard from Health Minister Adrian Dix, who said, no one wants these new restrictions, but it's what we must do if we want to see those numbers go down. Mike, Tanya?
All right, thank you so much. That's our Tina Lovegreen reporting live tonight. If you are still waiting to get a flu shot in BC, Dr. Henry says more doses are on the way. She says they're not seeing shortages across the province, even though some of their supply has been used up.
Where the challenge has been is that in some places, the allotment that goes to pharmacies and physicians' offices has run through, that they've used up their doses. We do have additional doses coming, and they are coming in the end of November and into December.
Henry says more than 1.5 million doses are in BC, and there has been an early demand for the vaccine.
And it's not just our province that's struggling to contain the COVID-19 virus. Case counts are surging right across the country. Numbers remain especially high in central Canada. Ontario reporting more than 1,200 new infections today. Quebec registering just under 1,200. In Western Canada, cases are ballooning in all 4 provinces. Saskatchewan saw a daily record 190 new cases. Manitoba reporting 365.
Well, after counting more than 500,000 mail-in ballots over the weekend, the final tally solidifies an even stronger NDP majority government. When the dust settled on election night, the New Democrats were projected to win 53 seats, the Liberals 27, and the Greens 3. But now that all the results are in, the final count secures 57 seats for the NDP, 28 for the Liberals, and just 2 for the Greens. Now that's all pending a recount in the closest race. It was the riding of West Vancouver Sea to Sky, where the Liberal candidate wound up with just 41 votes more than the Greens. Now, John Horgan today said one of his first priorities will be delivering on his marquee campaign promise of $1,000 for families. But can he guarantee it'll arrive by Christmas?
I can't guarantee that because I don't know what restrictions we'll have in terms of getting the legislature back into place. I have been advised by finance officials that once the dollars are appropriated, it won't take very much time at all to direct deposit the money in most cases.
And when asked for a timeline, Horgan would only promise the money will come in December or early January.
A man who stabbed a 13-year-old girl to death at her Abbotsford High School 4 years ago testified for the first time today. A judge convicted Gabriel Klein of second-degree murder in Letitia Reimer's death last March. Klein is now testifying at a hearing to determine if he should be held not criminally responsible because of a mental disorder. Under examination from his lawyer, Klein said he had been diagnosed with schizophrenia and felt suicidal the day he killed Reimer. His testimony will continue this week. The Crown will argue Klein understood what he was doing at the time of the killing and knew the difference between right and wrong.
And meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us now with a first look at the forecast. Joe, you're all bundled up. Quite a jarring start to the work week. This is the first time we get to talk about snow this season.
No kidding. I think some people more excited than others about the first snow, but here in East Van, I can confirm we've got wet snow falling right now, yet to accumulate, but temperatures are dropping, and I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see some slush on the roads, even down to sea level. Yes, it's cold out here, but what kind of meteorologist would I be if I was not out on the first snow? Take a look at pictures from East Van earlier today. We actually had sort of 2 rounds of snow. The first flakes that flew earlier today weren't actually associated with this system. It was just cold enough that we had a little bit of an upper air disturbance that brought those flakes, but the real event just starting now. And this is where else we're getting snow. Prince George under the snowfall warning. In fact, snowfall warnings extend from the North Thompson through Prince George into Stewart. This is real wintry weather. They could end up with 10 plus centimeters of snow on the ground, and roads have been bad all day in through Prince George. Let me take you to the satellite and radar, the 2 centers of low telling the story across the province. We're getting that low moving in across the island right now, and we do still have snowfall warnings for North Shore and northeastern sections of Metro Vancouver for 5 to 10 centimeters. Here in East Van, we're not likely to get that much, but I will take you through the timing of who exactly is going to get what and when it all ends coming up.
All right, I think we're looking forward to that. Thanks, Joe. Talk to you again in a bit. Well, Metro Vancouver is getting a new conservation region. 160 acres of land is being added to the Cod Wetland Ecological Conservancy area. The parcel was previously in the rural residential land base along the Pitt River. It's the first step in opening up the area to the public, and the ultimate goal is to create a Stanley Park equivalent for the Tri-Cities. The regional district says park use is up to 14 million in 2020. That's nearly a 37% increase. The area is home to 160 bird species, including a sandhill crane nesting area.
These 56 hectares added to Cod wetlands will protect diverse habitats and ensure residents can enjoy places close to home for many, 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 many years to come. I know that our entire community will feel proud of this new conservation land that will serve Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley for centuries to come.
The mayor says protected areas are becoming more important as the pandemic has led to more people heading into the backcountry.
A BC charity is scrambling to raise $1.7 million to buy a private island near Parksville and protect it from development. The BC Parks Foundation has until next Tuesday to secure enough cash to purchase West Balinas Island from a private owner. The foundation says the island has sensitive ecosystems and is virtually undisturbed by human impacts. Another $850,000 is still needed to complete that sale.
Well, a new film that just wrapped up production will share the untold stories of Sikh soldiers during the First World War and Second World War. Like Canadians, Indians enlisted in both wars, but their contributions aren't as well known. A Surrey historian is hoping his film Promises brings light to Sikhs' efforts to help defeat the Nazis. None of the people portraying Sikh soldiers are actors. Instead, They are all played by local law enforcement officers.
British, Canadian, Indian soldiers, South African soldiers, soldiers from Australia and New Zealand, they're fighting for the same cause, the same democracies and freedoms, and yet we sometimes remember the white dominions, but we don't remember India.
Yesterday was the last day of filming, but the production crew is already hoping to have a teaser ready for release on Remembrance Day. The full film will be available next year.
And a photographer who's used to capturing moments in sports and entertainment is instead turning his lens now to everyday Canadians who've made the choice to serve our country.
As Corey Correa reports, the project started out as a way to show appreciation and has since grown into a work of inspiration.
Yeah, give me a smile. That's actually
a moment immortalized in a photo. Toronto's Trevor Godino has made capturing these moments his vocation. But 2 years ago, he was inspired to start a new project.
Honor Country Sacrifice originally started when I was photographing a few vets from World War II for a publication I was working on. And my thought was like, these are amazing stories that Canadians need to know about.
Telling the stories of heroes among us, Godino began collecting portraits of active and retired Canadian Armed Forces members. But as a first-generation Canadian of Indian descent, he noticed he wasn't seeing veterans that looked like him.
I felt that it's very important to show men, women, people of color, people of LGBTQ communities, and also Aboriginals, that they're also part of this great story of what the Canadian military is.
The project has gained traction over social media and has garnered attention from across the country. What started off last year in Toronto has now brought him out west to BC.
I think it's important to understand, especially in Canada, that we don't have a really strong connection with our military community and our veterans.
Thought it was just a noble project, and I've done presentations for Remembrance Day to school children and stuff like that before, so I really enjoy that PR side of the military.
He has already captured the portraits of 40 current members and veterans. His goal? To gather more than 400 others over the next few years and display them in exhibits, showcasing the sacrifice of our veterans, old and new, around the country. Corey Correa, CBC News, Vancouver.
That's a great idea. And a reminder, you can also watch this newscast live on CBC Gem.
CBC Vancouver is also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram.
And you can also follow both of us on Instagram and Twitter, and Johanna Wagstaffe as well.
Well, drug maker Pfizer says its experimental COVID-19 vaccine appears to be 90% effective. Coming up, the possible time frame on when it might be available here in Canada. And thanks for staying with us tonight during our commercial-free live stream. Well, the town of North Rustico, PEI, has installed more than 400 crosses surrounding its cenotaph for Remembrance Day.
Each cross represents each veteran from the community. It was organized by the Knights of Columbus, and the town, as a way to continue to honor those who've served, have found a safe way to do it.
We wanted to, as an organization, do something maybe a little bit more special this year to recognize the veterans from our communities. We envisioned a project that brought some more visibility to the veterans from this area.
November 11th is very important to the people of this town. So to have such a wonderful display meant a lot to the town, and the council embraced it strongly.
We started with a list of 180 names. We went to all of the churches and the schools. A lot of different places had plaques and other recognition up. We recognized that we may be missing some people. We made our best efforts.
We've decided, because of COVID and the safety involved, like many other communities, we're not going to have our formal ceremony, but what we are going to have is from 11 o'clock through 3 o'clock that day, we're going to have people come in at this end of the walk, go up, lay their popular wreath, acknowledge their family member, and carry on. So it is, we're still going to celebrate it. We just have to do it, like many things, in a different way this year.
I am a veteran of 26 years in the Canadian Armed Forces, and when I look at these crosses, then I know that the people appreciate all the people that serve.
We now know that there's over 400 veterans. To think of a small local communities to have that many people that served, it shows what the heart of the people of this area is.
I think it's a very powerful visual representation of the people who served from this area. It has more impact, and that's what we set out to do.
The Knights of Columbus have done a wonderful thing here, and the town's really embraced it. But we all know that day is about those people. They're the ones that gave their life and their families' remembrance. It just makes you swell with pride. There's no question about it. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it is a wonderful thing, a nice tribute. Something very similar we saw last week in a nearby province there in New Brunswick.
That's right, it's all across the country. Well, we'll be back in a few moments with more national and international news. Be sure to stay with us.
Drug maker Pfizer says its experimental COVID-19 vaccine appears to be 90% effective. Many governments and health officials are welcoming the news of a potential vaccine. But as Christine Birak explains, the wait is far from over.
The vaccine is still experimental, but by all accounts, it's encouraging news.
Most experts have said that for a vaccine to be useful, it should be about 60 to 70% effective, and Pfizer is saying that their vaccine seems to be 90% effective. So well above the threshold that we would have liked to see.
The data hasn't been peer-reviewed yet, but the trial enrolled more than 43,000 people, and over 40% were from diverse backgrounds. Drug makers Pfizer and BioNTech say their vaccine prevented COVID-19 in 90% of volunteers who hadn't been previously infected. Protection kicked in 28 days later after 2 doses of the gene-based vaccine.
As long as the final published results are in keeping with this, I very much suspect that this vaccine is going to get approved and used. But you always have to have that small caveat. We need to actually see the final data before we can make any final decisions.
Pfizer says it's still collecting final safety data, but plans to ask the U.S. Food and Drug Administration for emergency use authorization of its vaccine as early as next week. But experts say some important questions remain unanswered, including how long are people protected and who is best protected.
Maybe the people who were protected in the vaccinated group were all young people.
The drug maker says it's optimistic immunity can last for at least a year. And by the end of this year, they're planning to have enough doses to vaccinate 15 to 20 million people worldwide. But this type of vaccine must be transported and kept at -80 degrees. So most Canadians shouldn't expect a shot anytime soon.
Social distancing, masks, and everything we've been doing so far will need to be maintained for 6, 12 to 18 months, depending on when other vaccines are going to become available.
Similar vaccines are also in their final trial phase, offering added hope for an end to this pandemic. Christine Birak, CBC News, Toronto.
Now, if this vaccine delivers as promised, it will be one of the world's hottest commodities. How many Canadians will be able to get it, and how soon? CBC's Salima Shivji shows us the plan.
We see the light at the end of the tunnel.
The good news, Canada has already secured 20 million doses of Pfizer's vaccine, thanks to a strategy Ottawa has been pursuing, not so quietly, for months.
When a vaccine is ready, Canada will be too.
The Government of Canada has entered into agreements with Pfizer and Moderna.
At least 88 million doses, with options to attain tens of millions more.
In all, Canada has snapped up more than 300 million doses from 7 different companies, all for different vaccines, trying to cover all its bases.
Indeed, Canada is one of the countries around the world with the very best portfolio of potential vaccines, because we know that there is a certain amount of uncertainty as to which vaccines will land.
Uncertainty, too, on how to distribute a vaccine when it's ready. Pfizer's vaccine requires 2 doses and needs to be kept very cold at -75 degrees. Cities like Toronto are already trying to find enough space to vaccinate the general public.
We are doing this work now so that we will be ready for what we know will be a massive effort.
Plans are already drafted for who would get vaccinated first, those most at risk, in long-term care homes, on the front lines, and in Indigenous communities.
Rollout is going to be the most difficult part of this vaccine. For us as a general population to get a vaccine in the arm, yes, we might be looking at 6 months to a year.
And the government is still pursuing its strategy of buying vaccine options. It's in the final stages of talks for more doses from Pfizer in the hopes of covering more Canadians. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Ottawa.
As we mentioned earlier in this newscast, Manitoba is now struggling to flatten a growing COVID curve. Officials are mulling over further restrictions, but as Cameron McIntosh shows us, a deadly weekend is sparking calls for the province to do more.
On standby, an ambulance sits ready outside Winnipeg's Maples long-term care home after a weekend that saw 8 residents die and paramedics called in several times to deal with dozens of COVID cases. Today, health officials said the privately run home was understaffed.
It's devastating. It's extremely concerning.
Elvin Kodonic is worried about 2 family members still inside.
I don't know if they're okay. We haven't been able to get a hold of anyone at the Maples for quite some time.
Winnipeg's mayor says the province failed in its oversight.
There clearly haven't been lessons learned from other provinces that, quite frankly, should have been.
As Winnipeg enters its second week of red-level restrictions, the provincial government is taking flack from several sides. 61-year-old Jean-Claude Dianzenza is the first healthcare worker to die contracting COVID at work. Doctors have been openly expressing concerns over safety and staffing. Meanwhile, teachers are complaining inadequate planning for socially distanced and remote learning is leading to burnout.
There's no available substitutes.
This is going to be a challenging time.
Today, the education minister announced funding to help develop and deliver more remote learning. But times may soon get worse.
In just 1 week, we've announced more than 2,000 cases.
The chief medical health officer says current restrictions aren't working. A short but full shutdown could be coming.
Nothing has been off the table.
A poll last week shows some support for that. As for how it's being handled,
we still have a fair bit of faith in the public health officials, a lot less faith and diminishing faith in our provincial leaders.
It's clear that the government's losing their grip on the current COVID situation, and something has to be done.
in a statement, Premier Brian Pallister said it's easy to criticize from afar while urging collaboration, something many say his own government is failing to provide. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Well, next door in Ontario, that province's case count continues to rise as well, with the 7-day average trend at its highest level yet. But as Mike Crawley reports, despite that surge, Premier Doug Ford is defending his government's new strategy on restrictions.
Oh, this is going to be real messy.
The Premier gets a lesson in drywalling.
This is not working. I better stick to politics.
The reason? He's announcing a job skills program for veterans during his daily news briefing.
We're in desperate need of drywallers, tapers, mutters.
But no reporters ask Ford about drywalling during the news conference that follows. It's Ontario's record-high COVID-19 numbers that prompt the most questions.
This is worldwide. You see the numbers going up around the world. And I'd think differently if it was just Ontario.
Ontario's first wave of COVID-19 is being eclipsed by the second. On average right now, more than 1,100 cases per day, nearly double the peak last spring.
So as much as we're seeing the numbers go up, we still have the lowest numbers for any large jurisdiction.
Still, Ontario's case count is rising, while Ford and his government are loosening restrictions, including allowing bars and restaurants to resume serving customers indoors in regions such as Peel, York, and Ottawa. Experts question the strategy.
We're at a critical stage here where, as the weather gets colder, folks move indoors. We have the holiday season coming up. continue to be diligent. This isn't the time to take the foot off the gas. It isn't the time to get lax.
We really don't want people to be in restaurants by and large. We don't want people gathering indoors in many places as much as possible unless absolutely necessary. And by opening them up, we are telling people, rightly or wrongly, that those are acceptable practices.
I think it'd be worse disaster if we just shut everything down. I've always said, I'm no medical expert, but I'll tell you one thing, you lose your business, you lose your house.
The COVID-19 case counts are not just rising here in Toronto and the GTA. Some public health units in smaller cities and even in Northern Ontario are reporting a growing rate of new infections. Still, the province's Chief Medical Officer of Health insists the curve could be flattened in December if people follow the guidelines. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
Kids Help Phone, the national 24/7 charity that offers free mental health counseling to young people, has seen call volumes double since the pandemic began. But now some of its own counselors are making a distress call. They say employee performance is tracked so strictly, the workplace feels more like a corporate call center than a service that offers emotional support. Diane Buckner has the story.
I heard a girl on the other line sobbing.
This video was made by Kids Help Phone, featuring its counselors talking about the type of heart-wrenching calls they get every day.
To find out that he was having thoughts of suicide himself.
The organization has given support and even restored hope to countless young people. But its own staff say they need more support.
Things got really difficult to keep up with my own mental health and seeing people around me kind of burning out.
It was all about hitting target and increasing numbers.
CBC News is protecting the identities of these two former counselors. They fear their careers will be damaged by revealing the way Kids Help Phone micromanages its staff to the minute.
How long we were able to take breaks and how long we needed to be on the phone and how many calls were we taking.
The organization uses software to track counselors' activities. Breaks are strictly monitored. Counselors used to be given ample time to recover after the most disturbing calls. No more.
I got told, you went a minute over your lunch. What are we going to do about it?
This expert on call centers says the type of work done at Kids Help Phone isn't suited to corporate-style metrics of efficiency.
The issue with this type of monitoring is that it really contributes to employee emotional burnout. Okay, and when employees are burnt out, they really can't perform at their best.
Reach out to Kids Help Phone.
In March, the government announced an additional $7.5 million in funding for Kids Help Phone. 20 new counselors were hired by June. More are coming. So far, that hasn't reduced stress, says this counselor, and complaints to management have gone nowhere. Kids Help Phone declined our request for an on-camera interview, but after being told about its counselor's decision to go public, it now says it will abandon the strict performance targets and offer more mental health support to its own team. Diane Buckner, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, up next, President-elect Joe Biden is beginning to form his transition team, but the current president is still refusing to concede and appears to be setting the stage for a long battle in the courts. We'll have the latest out of the United States next.
Tacoma, Washington, once described as Seattle's dirty backyard. Locals used to joke about heavy industry's gift to the city, the so-called Tacoma aroma. But the city has a new source of pride, the 20,000-seat Tacoma Dome and the Tacoma Stars indoor soccer team. The city also has the former pride of Vancouver, Bobby Lenarduzzi, ex-star of the Vancouver Whitecaps.
Bobby, see him, Bobby?
After 11 years with the Whitecaps, Lenarduzzi is trying to make a new start. He came to Tacoma 1 month ago after being cut loose by the financially strapped Vancouver club. With a wife and 1-year-old son in Vancouver, Lenarduzzi didn't want to stray too far. Tacoma promised to match his previous undisclosed Whitecaps salary, and a deal was signed. So Lenarduzzi will soon move his family to a Tacoma apartment until the indoor season ends in April. In the meantime, he's living in a hotel room alone.
Initially, it wasn't that bad because I do have a young boy who tends to wake up in the middle of the night, so I was getting a few half-decent night's sleeps in the hotel, but now that I've been away from him for 2 weeks, I really do want to see him, and that's probably been the hardest thing to take.
Lenarduzzi was the Whitecaps' former pretty boy, poster boy, and local boy, an East End kid who made good. He doesn't have that going for him in Tacoma, but he says he's not worried.
A lot of people don't identify with a lot of the players just yet, but I think that could change after this season, providing that we do well on the field.
But while Bobby Lenarduzzi hasn't made his name here yet, the Tacoma Stars have. They're pretty much the only game in town, and the fans are out there. Anybody know what his name is?
No.
No.
No. How about Mike?
Busy maybe in politics? No. I don't
Ever heard of the name Bob Lenarduzzi?
No.
Have you ever heard of the Tacoma Stars indoor soccer team?
Oh yeah, I think I heard about it, read something in the paper about it. Yeah.
He plays for them.
Oh, yeah, sports.
Do you play soccer?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, a soccer player.
How did you guess that?
Well, his body looks like he's lithe and he runs a lot.
He's an athlete of some time. I figured that when I saw him, that he was an athlete of some time.
Lenarduzzi is optimistic. He hopes everything in Tacoma works out. If it doesn't, and the Whitecaps don't awaken from their winter hibernation, Lenarduzzi says he'll quit soccer for good.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
You think you had questions this weekend? I had many, many more, I am sure.
BC's top doctor spent much of her briefing today trying to clarify new restrictions for the Fraser and Vancouver health regions. The new orders focus on social gatherings, travel, indoor group exercises, and workplaces. Dr. Bonnie Henry also reported almost 1,000 new COVID-19 cases and 5 deaths over the past 2 days.
There's a whole bunch of people that are not abiding by the minimalist rules we had in place.
BC's premier is warning we could revert to more lockdown-style restrictions if COVID cases don't go down. John Horgan says it's critical that essential services continue to function and that surgeries and schools continue to operate as safely as possible. For that to happen, he adds, it's crucial that people reduce social contacts over the next 2 weeks, especially in the Lower Mainland.
I very much suspect that this vaccine is going to get approved and used, but you always have to have that small caveat. We need to actually see the final data before we can make any final decisions.
And now the good news, drug maker Pfizer says its experimental COVID-19 vaccine appears to be 90% effective. Many governments and health officials are welcoming the news of a potential vaccine. But for a world weary from the months-long battle with the deadly pandemic, final approval could take several months.
A potential COVID vaccine and the virus racing through the U.S. right now are top of mind for Joe Biden.
Our Susan Ormiston now with the president-elect's message to Americans as he prepares to try to get the pandemic there under control.
An old theater house is HQ for the new president-elect and his transition team. Get used to the motorcade. Joe Biden's priority his first week trying to take the politics out of the pandemic.
Good afternoon, everyone. It doesn't matter who you voted for. We are Americans and our country is under threat. The bottom line.
The vaccine is promising, he says, but many months away. As cases in the U.S. climbed above 10 million today, nearly 1,000 a day are dying. And unlike Trump, Biden warned the coming winter looks dark.
The projections still indicate we could lose 200,000 more lives in the coming months before a vaccine can be made widely available.
Biden is blunt. Wear a mask, everyone, no matter their politics.
I want to be very clear. The goal of mask wearing is not to make your life less comfortable. It's to take something away from you. It's to give something back to all of us, a normal life.
With Biden's win, if one word for many, relief.
I'm very relieved that somebody's in office that cares about the United States population.
And we have a daughter.
Ernest Savage just got in his car in North Carolina this morning and drove up here to Delaware.
Historical. I wanted to be a part of this history-making moment and this change because I believe sincerely that we are in for a great ride. It's not going to be easy.
Donald Trump's not going anywhere, he says.
That's what he says. But that's not what's going to happen.
Yeah! Biden's team has about 70 days to transition to a new government, regardless of the continuing resistance from the White House. Biden's new COVID advisory board is led in part by a former Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, who was dismissed by Trump. Biden says he'll lean on the science, but he'll be challenged by some state governors reluctant to follow his lead. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Wilmington, Delaware.
And Prime Minister Justin Trudeau congratulated Joe Biden and Kamala Harris today on winning the U.S. election. He says he looks forward to working with them.
I also want to take a moment to reflect on the historic milestone reached in this election. For so many people in Canada and around the world, seeing a woman, a Black and South Asian American woman, elected as the next Vice President of the United States is an inspiration and a reminder that everyone's voice belongs in politics.
Trudeau was asked if he may have congratulated Biden and Harris too soon. President Trump is challenging the outcome, baselessly calling it fraud. Trudeau says he's quite certain of the results.
Well, coming up, the role of safety officers is coming into question in northern Manitoba. It comes in the wake of a video that shows an Indigenous woman being punched and knocked unconscious at an RCMP detachment. More on calls from the community up next.
6:41 Monday night, a live look at Prince George this evening. Snow blanketing the city there. And yes, that was even snow in some areas of Metro Vancouver today, and there could be more on the way. Johanna's forecast just ahead.
The Market Report is brought to you by Fortis BC. We've got even bigger rebates. Rebate? Whoa! On select high-efficiency equipment for business, but only for a limited time.
Johanna Wagstaffe back with us now, safely inside from the blizzard of the century.
Yeah, seriously. Nobody panic.
No panicking. No panicking.
Yeah, not quite the blizzard of the century, but I only do one outside a day when we're only talking trace to 2 centimeters of snow. The trains are still running, as you can hear, so the city has not shut down yet. And we are not expecting apocalyptic amounts, but we do have the snowfall warnings in place for parts of the city. Let me start off with the temperatures, because this is sort of helping to tell our story. 3 at YVR, so we are seeing a rain-snow mix farther north and through downtown and East Van, where temperatures are more like a 2 or a 1. Up towards Squamish, we're at a 0. Definitely seeing snow up there as the system moves up from the southwest. So here's the radar shot right now, and you can see the blues and the pinks and the purples. That's the wintry mix that we're getting right now. So a lot of Metro Vancouver is in the rain, down towards Delta and Richmond, south of Highway 1 in through the valley, also rain right now. Taking you through the snowfall forecast, this is sort of a look at where I think the amounts will end up as we head into Tuesday morning. Everyone in the light blue, that's just trace amounts. So higher elevations in Metro Vancouver, sort of around the 150 meter mark. That's where we'll probably get traced to 2 centimeters, and you can see it's much farther north into the North Shore. Maybe Maple Ridge, Coquitlam will end up with a 5 to 10 centimeters, and that is where we are under the warnings. Taking you through the system's forecast, it does move through quite quickly. The pink, again, is the rain-snow mix. So as we head into Tuesday morning, that rain-snow mix rises and moves on to the east. Chilliwack, you're right on that border through tomorrow morning. So some wintry driving if you're commuting early out towards the valley, but the rain will move off and through Metro Vancouver through the morning hours, and the clouds follow suit, clearing as we head through the day on Tuesday. I think we'll get a good shot of sunshine, although we are left with cool temperatures still in the wake. Quick look across the province tomorrow. Everyone a little cool, and I should mention not just Prince George and Vancouver getting the snow. Kelowna, 5 to 10 centimeters tonight, and even Cranbrook, a couple centimeters. Terrace and Stewart, a couple centimeters for you. We've got the rain back on Wednesday night, so sort of bookended a Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday morning sunny break. Does look like we turn soggy again for the end of the week, but we've got some sunny breaks in there, so all is not lost this week.
All right, we shall stay tuned hour by hour. Thanks so much, Johanna.
You're welcome.
Let's shift gears now, take you to tragedy in Toronto. A 12-year-old boy remains in the hospital in life-threatening condition after he was shot over the weekend. The boy and his mother were innocent bystanders returning home from shopping when 2 suspects suddenly got out of a car and opened fire. The CBC's Greg Ross has the update.
The 12-year-old boy is still in life-threatening condition.
With a boy's life hanging in the balance, police say they are still looking for at least 2 suspects in a weekend shooting that put the 12-year-old in hospital.
So we have a dedicated guns and gangs task force that is working around the clock.
Police say the 12-year-old boy was with his mother when he was shot. Apparently they were walking here on the west side of Jane Street on their way home from shopping. The shooters, according to police, were in that parking lot of that apartment building across the street when they opened fire. And according to police, it appears the 12-year-old boy was hit by a stray bullet.
Every single solitary day.
Yesterday, residents expressed frustration to the mayor when he went to the scene along with the chief of police. Today, many of those same residents were feeling concerned for their own safety, knowing that the shooters still have not been caught.
It's madness out here, so you can't be safe around these neighborhoods. You never know what's going to happen.
It's scary, really scary.
Tina Aristo, who has kids of her own, lives on the ground floor of the building, just steps from the parking lot, where 2 shooters got out of one car and opened fire on another.
Yeah, they don't care. They just do what they want to do. They don't care.
3 other people who were also injured in the shooting, including a 17-year-old, have all been released from hospital. Police say they are working on several leads and are confident they will find those responsible for this, but say they still need more help from witnesses. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
A video showing an Indigenous woman being punched and knocked unconscious at an RCMP detachment in northern Manitoba is raising questions about the role of community safety officers. And a warning, this story contains video some may find disturbing. CBC's Caroline Bargu has more.
In January 2018, 19-year-old Janesta Garson was out drinking when two community safety officers picked her up and took her to the local RCMP detachment in Thompson. They asked her to strip down to one layer of clothing before placing her in a cell for the night. But when Garson tossed her belt towards one of the men, he punched her in the face and knocked her unconscious. Instead of investigating the community safety officer's actions, RCMP charged Garson with assault.
What turns out to be a routine process that's employed in northern Manitoba resulted in Miss Garson sustaining injuries at the hands of RCMP and community safety officers.
The officers dragged Garson into a jail cell and left her on her back while she was barely conscious. She was eventually taken to hospital by paramedics. Unlike police, community safety officers do not fall under the jurisdiction of the Independent Investigation Unit of Manitoba. So if there are allegations against them, the RCMP would be responsible for looking into them. In this case, they didn't. Garson is now suing the community safety officers, the RCMP, and the City of Thompson for discrimination and excessive use of force. She says she was detained, humiliated, and mistreated simply because she's Indigenous. Caroline Bargood, CBC News, Winnipeg.
For 26 years, he has crafted 5,000 toys to give to kids for Christmas. Coming up, we'll take you to the North Shore and introduce you to 90-year-old Bill Chalmers to find out how and why he does it. Stay with us.
I'm 99 and 5 months. I've been canvassing for a half a century. I lost one time, and it's kind of a record for my age.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Take care. Thanks for your service.
Not too many people my age to start with. And where I live at Tivity Village, I'm the oldest one there. I'm probably one of the oldest campaign in Canada. I'm not the youngest, that's for sure.
Oh, thank you. Full service.
It is, sometimes we say it's like Christmas for Dad because he really loves talking to people and the wonderful attention that comes from being one of our last remaining World War II veterans. He knows how important it is for him to be out talking about his story and making sure that Canada remembers and, most importantly, raising some money to support our veterans.
We never lost a ship. And our ship was HMCS Ottawa. We had the best record of the war. We sunk 3 U-boats. This is the best record of the World War. I started a Legion in 1968 in Toronto, and I've been campaigning every year, so I thought maybe I have too much more to go. I'm 99, I might as well finish it off.
We have to remember that fascism, when it threatened our world in my dad's youth, is something never to be forgotten, that there is sacrifice required when there is evil in the world. And Dad more than once has talked about what he's seen down in the United States with Donald Trump. And that is important that we remember that sacrifices have to be made in order for good to thrive. As a family, we're so blessed and so proud of him, and we're so happy that he is able to do this.
Right here in St. John's is pretty safe. If I was in Toronto, maybe I would doubt it. But here, I think I'm pretty safe. this is why I'm still campaigning.
Dad has gotten to 99 looking like this, so there's really not much that can keep him down.
Welcome back. From movie making to competitive racing, even to Joe Biden's victory speech on Saturday, drones are taking off pretty much everywhere these days.
Yeah, but one of the most practical tasks they could do has remained a dream for the future for Canadians until now. A Salt Spring Island company just became the first drone delivery service in the country to get the go-ahead from federal regulators. Indro drones can carry cargo as heavy as 10 kilograms and as far as 25 kilometers. They expect that range to grow to 200 kilometers soon.
Now we can start thinking of drones as airlines. So similar to Air Canada or WestJet. Now they're a commercial entity that can officially carry cargo.
Indro says door-to-door delivery of online shopping is coming, but it's still about a year or two away. Well, cancer is not stopping former woodworker Bill Chalmers from giving back to kids in need.
For the past 26 years, the 90-year-old has made around 5,000 wooden toys to give to the North Shore Christmas Bureau each year.
The CBC caught up with him to see how he does it.
I feel personally good because this morning I know that our youngster has one of our toys and maybe two, and is having a good time. My name is Bill Chalmers, and I make toys for kids.
Started making odd toys for children of friends of ours. Then it grew from there. He recognized that there were people that didn't have much at Christmas time.
That's a Scottish Terrier.
We've had two Scottish Terriers.
Two Scottish. I feel good about it, and I'll do it as long as I'm able.
What a guy. And finally, tributes continue to pour in for Jeopardy host Alex Trebek.
Yeah, he died yesterday at the age of 80 after a battle with pancreatic cancer. As you can see, people have been laying flowers on Trebek's star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, just one of the many ways fans are mourning his loss. Trebek, of course, hosted Jeopardy for more than 3 decades, winning 6 consecutive daytime Emmys for Outstanding Game Show in the 1990s. He was originally from Sudbury, Ontario.
What a legend.
Yeah, a lot of people saying some very nice things, deservedly so, about Alex Trebek, and he really went quite public with his disease in his final days, but what a great man.
Yeah, and so optimistic right until the end, and he for sure will be missed. You can always find this newscast, by the way, online at our website, cbc.ca/BC.
Next local news, 11 o'clock, right after the National with Dan Burrett. He doesn't have the National, he's got the 11. See you again tomorrow. Thanks for watching.
Good night.